Hello tacticians, as some of you may be more than aware, I really like my PvP, and this week sees the return of the Conquest Tournament Arena. So, we're going to have a closer look at Sword Brother Godswyl to see what he can offer there. But before we go into that, I just want to say my thank yous, and today they go to Trazin, Animal, Raptor, Adamski and Chick. All of you have used my friend code and it is very much appreciated. So thank you very much. Before we start looking at Godswyl, I thought I'd look at the character I'm going to compare him to, who is a very good character to use in the Conquest TA, and that's Tjark. Now, the reason why Tjark is so good in the Conquest Tournament Arena is because of his grapnel launcher. It enables you to grab someone off the point and then he will go on the point, which means you're denying a victory point to the enemy and gaining one for yourself. With the recent rework of Sword Brother Godswyl here, his active ability does something very similar. And what that means is he can push someone off the hex and then he will move into that vacated hex. Now, obviously, this doesn't work on large targets, such as Ravas. With Tjark, you're basically pulling that enemy towards you, which makes them easier to kill, but with Godswyl, you're pushing them away and you're stunning them, which means they will not be able to use their skill in their next turn, and they can only move one as well. The other thing to think about here is the amount of damage that they actually do with this attack. Godswyl is using power damage, which is a 40% pierce ratio compared to Tjark's physical, which is a 1%. So on average, you'll probably be doing more damage with Godswyl, which may in fact lead to you being able to kill that character with Godswyl rather than Tjark, who may not be able to kill a character. And the reason for that is, yes, Tjark has many attacks, but they all do less damage, and they are all physical. So unless you've got Tjark backed up with someone like Eldrin, for example, he's not really doing much damage, unless of course he is fighting a Psyker. Godswyl, on the other hand, is going to do a ton of damage no matter who he's facing, and he's going to do it all the time. Not only that, his passive means that after he moves, he deals additional power damage to an adjacent enemy. Now, this is random, so if there are two or more adjacent enemies, it's going to be on one of them, so you can't always guarantee it's going to hit who you want it to. But it does also remove armor. And even if you don't move Godswyl, this ability will trigger at the end of the turn. This is an amazing ability to have in the TA. So let's have a look at their stats. Godswyl has roughly 100 extra health and a touch more armor. And as I mentioned earlier, he only has the one attack, which does do a lot more damage than you would first realise when you compare it to Tjark's because of that power, that 40% pierce ratio. So let's have a look at them both in action. So first, my favourite test, can they stand up to a calendar shot? There is a crit and Godswyl is left on a very small amount of health. And versus Tjark, also a crit but an overkill. So you could probably say that they're about equal here. Now, the one thing that I did recognise as I was setting these up is Tjark, of course, has stealth, but Godswyl has got the extra pip of movement, which comes from his rapid assault, which means he's got the additional movement until he makes a melee attack. And then the first melee attack each battle deals additional damage. The extra movement and the extra damage is critical in some cases in the tournament arena. But then again, stealth can be very useful too. And here we have a very unlikely scenario, but I'm doing this to show the pros and cons of both Godswyl and Tjark. So here, if we were to use our Thunderous Assault against Marneus Calgar, which pushes him back, I want to know what actually happens when there's nowhere to be pushed to. So there was the move in where Godswyl does one free hit. Then we use the Thunderous Assault and nowhere to push back to. But the interesting thing was the pushback then causes damage on the person he's being pushed back into. So a similar setup, but what will happen if I use Thunderous Assault when the tile directly behind Marneus is occupied, but one behind and to the side is free? So the first attack and second attack. So yes, you do need it to be directly behind the target for them to be moved. Now, having people hidden, for want of a better word, behind a main character isn't unusual in the tournament arena because the opponent doesn't want to get their characters too close to yours. And this is why Tjark is so good. He can literally grab hold of someone and swap places. However, it does put Tjark in a bit of a compromised position as well. But this shows you it's much easier to use Tjark's replacement than it is to use Godswyl's. Now, it's unlikely that Godswyl can't do a pushback because every single hex is occupied. But if we look at the two side ones here, there's only two places he can go. And in fact, Godswyl would only be useful in one of those spaces so the opponent can be pushed back a hex. So here in this circumstance, you can see that Godswyl will only be able to push Marneus back when he is directly in front of him, whereas Tjark would be able to pull him away from the edge. But as you can see, that pushback is just as effective as Tjark's pull forward in the circumstances where you need it to work. The other thing I'd like to point out about this Thunderous Assault is the fact it does reduce the armour. So as you can see here, Marneus Calgar's armour has been reduced by 134. That's half of his armour, and when you consider a character as tough as Marneus, that is a lot for him to use, which will then obviously make him easier to kill for your other characters. The other thing, of course, is he is also stunned by this effect, so he will only be able to move one, and he will deal 50% less damage, and he can't use any of his active abilities. And this combination of status effects really heightens how good Brother Godswyl is. Now, he can only do this the once, but then again, Tjark can only use his grapple once as well. And to give Tjark his fair due, we have to remember that that grapple can be used from up to 3 squares away, so he does not have to be next to the character to use it in the first place. So in this coming Conquest Tournament Arena, I'm certainly going to be taking in Sword Brother Godswyl instead of Tjark to get a true feel of the improvements that have been made to this Black Templar. Let me know what you think of Sword Brother Godswyl in the comments below and whether you would prefer to use Tjark or Godswyl in the coming Conquest Tournament Arena. If you find these videos useful, it'd be very much appreciated if you would at least think about using my friend code, as it really does help me out. Or if you or your guild are looking for a new home, please feel free to reach out to any of the guilds shown on the screen. As always, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll be seeing you on the battlefield.